Hi there fellow guitarists, my name is Josh Rogers, welcome to Note by Note Guitar. This is going to be an awesome tutorial all to do with posture and how you sit when you play classical guitar. Although this is a lesson about classical guitar posture, this type of posture can apply to any type of guitar playing. It can be electric or acoustic guitar, and even some of the latest guitars that are coming out at the time of making this video anyway are kind of designed to be played like this. If you look at some of the Strandberg guitars and Ormsby guitars, they've got this cutaway here, and you know, they're electric guitars, some of them 6, 7, 8, 9 string guitars, and they are actually designed to be played like this, or also standing. It doesn't really matter, but they do have this special cutaway. I'll leave a link below so you can see the guitars that I'm talking about. But in this particular case we're focusing on the classical guitar. In my mind there's two things that you need to consider. There's physical gear, and there's only 3 of those. That's your guitar, the seat that you're sitting on, and your footstool, one of these things. Or for other guitar players, they use the guitar support, which is a support that sits under here. It's usually held there by suction cups or magnets. For example, the Chris Barnett magnetic support, that thing's amazing. And it just sits under here and rests, and that way you can have both of your feet flat on the ground. But for this lesson, I'm just going to be covering the use of a footstool. The second thing is your actual physical body itself. That's how you sit in relation to those 3 components. The first thing I want to discuss is the guitar itself and why you actually hold it like this. There's a couple of reasons, but actually the main one is to project sound directly out towards your audience. The guitar is not a very loud instrument, unless it's plugged in of course, and then it can be as loud as you like. But most classical guitarists do not plug their guitars in. There's a camp out there that they're sworn against it. You know, they're like no sort of amplification whatsoever. Not even microphones in front of the guitar. I think when a guitar is trying to compete with an orchestra, you should use a microphone at least. It depends, you know, the classical guitar sort of fits into a lot of different situations, and volume, you know, it's so easy for it to be drowned out. But anyway, getting back to what I was talking about, the primary reason that we sit with the guitar cradled between our legs like this is to project sound directly ahead, or as I'll explain a little bit later, directly ahead and slightly up. The best experience for a listener is pretty much directly in front of the guitarist themselves. The second thing is the angle that the guitar is on. Now, you don't need to get out an angle device measurer thing and, you know, check what angle it is. Roughly, this headstock should be at about your eye level. And the reason for that is it allows your hand, your left hand or whichever hand you happen to be using to finger the notes, to access all notes as comfortably as possible without kind of inducing horrible bends in the wrist which can cause damage over a long period of time. So the reason that we have the guitar like this is so that it facilitates moving the hand and fingers easily whilst maintaining a nice wrist position. One of the common ways that guitarists sit, and you know, we all do this, even in some of my earlier videos I was sitting like this, and it's a pretty stink excuse, but the reason I was doing that was that I didn't have a footstool. I was on tour and I decided to start making some classical guitar videos, and I was stuck without my footstool in China. So I just started making them without it. But a lot of guitarists sit like this, and actually, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. It's really comfortable, and you'll even see some of the world's top classical guitarists when they're just mucking around at a party or something like that. They'll be sitting like this often. And you know, you can play the guitar really, really well like this as well, and a lot of people, they excel at playing like this. Got nothing against it, but it's generally not the classical approach. Classical approach is this, which brings me to the second reason that we sit like this, and that's to let as much of the back of the guitar resonate as possible. The back of the guitar is primarily responsible for pushing the sound out to the listener. If you're sitting like this, the guitar is really only contacting your body at 3 points. On this thigh, and your chest. Those are the main points, so that's actually allowing all of the back to vibrate quite freely. If you sit like this, you're actually tucking it in against your rib cage, and it's effectively cutting the guitar in half at the back. So you're losing some of that power, and also the sound is probably going to go more out this way rather than directly ahead. However you want to play the guitar, it's up to you. But these are some of the solid rules that have been discovered or uncovered as people have been playing the guitar for the last 200 years. The other 2 points of contact are your forearm here and of course your left hand or right hand when you're fingering the notes. So the idea is we're creating a triangle like this. Before I carry on, all of this information can be found in Aaron Shearer's Volume 1 book for classical guitar technique. I'll leave a link in the description below for that. And also Pumping Nylon, which I've spoken about in a couple of my other videos, and that's by Scott Tennant, one of the members of the Los Angeles Guitar Quartet. Fantastic teacher, amazing guitar player, and he has a really wonderful way of explaining things. So if you wanted to check out those two books, there's links in the description below. The next point is that the guitar usually is angled upwards slightly. What I mean by that is the bottom is pushed out and the top sort of comes back to you a little bit, which means your guitar is actually kind of facing upwards a little bit, not really like this, not so far back, although there are players like that, but in general the guitar should be angled up just slightly, and actually that also allows you to see where you're actually putting your fingers, which is quite nice. The next component is the trusty footstool. And I'll leave a link in the description for you for where you can pick up one of these footstools if you like. You can spend quite a bit of money on a footstool. It's really up to you. There's some beautiful wooden handcrafted ones, and there's just the generic steel ones like this. These last a long time, and they're also quite thin, which is nice, especially if space is at a premium and you need to get your footstool into a tight case or something like that. Some of the wooden ones are a bit more bulky. You can't quite fit them into your guitar case sometimes. So one of these is quite good. Where do you position this? The truth of it is, you position it wherever it makes you feel comfortable. You can control these two things, your footstool and your guitar. Those are usually with you all the time. The one thing that's always variable is the chair that you're going to be sitting on. That varies from venue to venue. If you're a top class guitar player, you might be able to write it in your list of things that you like to have. You like your pink M&Ms, 32-degree bottled water from the Swiss Alps, and also some type of special chair. If you've got the money at home, I'd recommend a piano chair where you can adjust the height. Those things are fantastic. But usually when you go out on tour, you could be playing anywhere, and a lot of places don't have that type of chair. So you've just got to make do with what you have. So I'm not really going to go into the chair too much, because there's just way too many variables with that. But if you're at home and you've got enough money, I'd recommend getting a piano stool where you can adjust the height. And some of them are so cool, you can open them up and they've got a space in there and you can chuck whatever you need to in that. The thing is bringing all of those together. Your footstool or your guitar support, your chair and your guitar. Those three need to harmonize with you perfectly. So that brings us to the last point, which is how do you sit? What's a good position for sitting? Actually, a good position for sitting is a position that's comfortable. It sounds ridiculous, but really you want to be absolutely comfortable when you're playing the guitar. It doesn't really mean you should be slouching all over the guitar like this, or leaning back or whatever. It's a position that's comfortable for you, but also helps to achieve the things that we mentioned before, which is providing a nice angle for your hand to play at, and also providing a beautiful listening experience for the people out in the audience. You want to provide them with a really wonderful experience. At some point, it's a bit of a trade-off. You have to trade some aspect of comfort also for the listener's experience and for your own playability. I tend to get a sore lower back, and that's not really through bad posture or anything. That's just what happens sometimes. If you go to the gym, you're going to get sore if you work out for hours and hours and hours, even if your technique is perfect. But there's a difference between getting a bit sore and actual real pain. This posture is designed to alleviate or minimize pain and allow you to play for a prolonged period of time, rather than, after about 5 minutes, oh, I can't play, my shoulders are sore, or my neck's aching, something like that. You want to try to minimize that. In the early days, you may find that your posture it's not so good, or you're getting sore, and that's just part of it. You have to gradually develop yourself so that your stamina increases and your ability to hold this type of posture just becomes natural. And it can be difficult in the early stages, but after several months, if you just keep at it, eventually it will just become what you do and you won't feel anything. Let's have a look at the shoulders, because they're the easiest things for you to see. Your shoulders in general should be flat. Usually what will happen is, and especially if you've got to do a big long chord that involves a stretch, you may dip this shoulder a little bit towards the neck, and that just helps sometimes to stretch a little bit further, because it allows you to bring your elbow into a better position. If you're here and you're trying to move your elbow forward and retain this posture, it's not going to work. You'll find that just through necessity you're going to have to dip your shoulder, and it will allow you to push your elbow forward, which will allow you in turn to maintain a better wrist position and make some of those more difficult stretches. But generally speaking, flat along here, or parallel with the ground. That's the ideal posture, or your starting posture. Your head, you can imagine, is going up through the ceiling, and that just keeps your chin at a nice level and kind of stops you from stooping over the guitar too much. If you start stooping over or leaning over your guitar, that can lead to a few back problems. Some people can just sit like that for hours and hours and hours and it doesn't matter. But generally speaking, you want to keep that back kind of straight, your head up, and let the guitar do the work for you. Shift the guitar. That's my suggestion to you. Make the guitar work. You know, you need to make your equipment work for you rather than the other way around. So that's my recommendation to you. Try to maintain the basic posture and move the guitar around. Or, you know, adjust your footstool. It might need to come up a little bit or down. I can't tell you how far you need to lift your footstool or drop your footstool. That's something that will develop over time. You don't need to rush into it. It may take you months, maybe years, before you're really happy with a good angle with your footstool and a good height. And it also depends on your shoes and how you're feeling at that particular day. Sometimes you might know, oh, I just want the guitar a little bit lower today. We're not robots. That's something important to remember as well. So things can be adjusted all the time, and it's probably something that you'll never truly settle on for the rest of your life. You know, things will change, your body's going to change, you might change the size of your guitar, maybe you get a good chair, and so everything's, you know, variable. It depends. The last thing I want to touch on is where your right hand is. In the earlier days of guitar playing, especially when Segovia and Tarrega were around, it was sort of favoured that your wrist would be quite bent. You know, if you look at some of the old Segovia recordings, his wrist was pretty bent. I've got nothing against it. That's how I learned in the early stages of my guitar playing. And then I had lessons with a wonderful guitar player called Gunther Herberg up at the Auckland University in New Zealand, and he changed my hand position to more like this. Now I'm kind of stuck somewhere in between. I'm neither here like that, like I used to be, and I'm not actually really like a lot of the modern players, like say Andre de Vitis, who has a very straight wrist here. Actually, I prefer the sound of this position. I have difficulty breaking that old habit, which is this. I find that I'm just, as I said, I'm sort of somewhere in between. I'm not going to say what's right and what's wrong. Any of you that have ever listened to Segovia's old recordings know that he was capable of producing a wonderful tone like this. The latest guitar players, you know, their tone's beautiful as well. It's different. That's all it is. It's not really, one's not really better or worse, but I think from a physiological point of view that this is probably better. Only because you're not really bending your wrist kind of unnaturally, be at a right angle to the strings, which is how it used to be. You know, you were supposed to have like a 90-degree angle here, and that was it. But now it's almost like it's 45, you know, and they're getting that really nice sound. You do have to adjust when you come onto the wound strings, otherwise you get that scraping sound. So it's kind of, you'll find that you may be like this. But the idea is you're just rotating here usually. It depends. You have to move around a lot, especially with some of the modern guitar techniques. You know, we've got gold there, a lot of harmonics, and you need to have a fairly free moving right arm for the picking. I find that some of those guitar players that I was telling you about that have the straight wrist, they actually have their guitar up on a higher angle like that, and then you don't even have to do anything here. You know, if I did that, you can see I don't even have to change, but the angle of my fingers to the strings is changing. I'm just using the guitar. As I said before, use the equipment, not your body. There. Once again, it's up to you guys how you want to do it, but I do encourage you to try, and at the very least, try to keep your back straight, shoulders square, and your head as if it's going up through the roof. Make the guitar, the chair, and your footstool or guitar support do the work for you, and then you just relax into your position and make it second nature. Anyway, all the best with that, and I hope this lesson has helped you in some way. Make sure to check out all my other videos. There's so much information on the channel. Also check me out on Instagram. Hook up to the website. There's some cool stuff going on there. My blog as well. They can help you become a full-time musician just like me. Have fun. Let's play this.